Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Just going to check that you can see me if anybody's tuning in. My phone should be on silent, but let's see if the live is coming up. Indeed. So please, if you can see me, let me know. If you can hear me, let me know. Let me just put the sound on for a second. Yeah, so we should be coming through with sound. Going to give it a few minutes. What I'd like you to do is please share. The subject matter for the live at 5 with Kane of GB Fitness, going to talk about tests and assessments through various means and bodily fluids. All will be made clear. No practical demonstrations will be given. Obviously, at the moment, I am restricted as a phlebotomist. I'm qualified in venipuncture. I quite happily take bloods all day long, send them to a lab, the doctor's lab in London. Very, very extensive range of tests. Top pathology lab in Europe. Turnaround time of several hours for most bloods. But that's not an option at the moment, not from me anyway. I'm quite happy to give you the kits. I'm happy to interpret results. I'm happy to refer you if you want to go to the lab. I'll expand on that, but I'm not doing bloods at the moment. What I will talk about is other things that could be done at home. But if you'd like to give me a few thumbs up, if you'd like to give me a few shares, that would be absolutely amazing. So I'm just going to put a little message, alive at 5 on tests for optimal, because I don't do well-being. You may have seen me give a talk for our well-being society last week. It seems they want mediocre, low-level being. I work at an optimal level. That's the advice that I give. That's the service that I deliver. Anything less, for me, is a waste of time. That's what I would want. So that's what I deliver. So I invite your questions. Just going to fire a few links out. And if people can please share, that would be absolutely fantastic. I had a busy day today, actually, on the phone with friends and helping people out. So I have been teaching the first aid for mental health, level 3 of qualification for great students in that. Done 1 or 2 consultations, helping people out with advice on nutrition, health matters and training. Spoken to the fantastic Simon Haycock at Fitness Factory Birmingham, asking my advice on some equipment. So gyms are closed down, but this man is still looking at upgrading his equipment and getting new things in. That's the kind of gym you want to be going to. And I've done a little interview, which I'll be putting up later, with Sean Anthony Blackwood, current world bodybuilding champion, good friend of mine, client and student. So I'm not going to invite too many people in. I'll leave that for you guys to do so I can get started. So let's see what we've got as far as Gary. How you doing, sir? So we'll be talking actually about that assessment. Might even kick off with that. Sport test, Dr. Gary Palmer up in Penkridge. So amazing test that can be done as a ramp test, as it's known, starting very low level, nice gentle walk with a sealable silicone mask on. Gases exchange, oxygen and carbon dioxide out, is analysed through a state-of-the-art gas analyzer, loads of algorithms and internal workings and shenanigans and skullduggery and magic in his laptop. And then it generates information on optimal fat burning zones, how many grams of fat you burn per minute, how much carbs, percentage ratios, lactic threshold, difference between anaerobic, aerobic, looking at training zones for optimum performance. Phenomenal tool. So look up Dr. Gary Palmer. His business site is Sport Test, and he's my go-to guy for testing parameters of fitness and fat loss. So that's one of the tests we've introduced. Nikki, how you doing? Hello. Put it on specially for you, Nikki. I'm glad you tuned in. Damn straight. Gemma, how you doing? So somebody sent me a fantastic, beautiful little thing to slap on my fridge, which also holds up pictures of my little ones. Falling down is a part of life. Getting back up, now that's living. How true are those words, eh? How testing are these times? So that's what I'm talking about tonight, testing. But testing for health parameters, potential and susceptibility to performance excellence or less than desirable health status, and also looking at current situations within blood, within stool, hormones within urine, a whole range of tests. So I've got some of the kits here. These could all be posted out. A few of you tuning in have had some of these tests done, so you'll know how state of the art they are. I only work with the very, very best labs around the world. So Nordic Labs Copenhagen, looking at labs in the States for stool tests, etc., etc. In Vivo, a new CQC lab, NHS approved lab for ecologic stool tests down on the south coast. And the doctor's lab, as I said, 1 second. So that's the doctor's lab. Pretty extensive book on a whole range of blood tests that can be done. From basic health overview, red blood cells, white blood cells, liver enzymes, your lipid profile, which is your LDL, HDL, VLDL, triglycerides, fats basically in your bloods and lipoproteins. Looking at health markers for hormones, be it thyroid, adrenal, female hormones, male hormones. Looking at markers for allergies, looking at tumor markers. I mean, the list is extensive. So if anything is of interest for you this evening, please contact me, DM me. We'll book a consultation in, have a chat through, because my job is to advise you as to the very best pathway to optimal health, rather than just second guessing and doing any old test. So let's see what else we've got. Sean, how you doing, sir? So I've just got off the phone with Sean. So please share this out, folks, if you're happy to. Let's get some people on board and see if we can send some invites. Get people watching. It's a Thursday evening, and it is Colonel Tom Moore, not Capitan anymore. Happy birthday, sir. Watched it with Oscar this morning, fly over with the Spitfire and the Hurricane. His birthday cake with the Spitfire on, the England cap, from a multitude of stars of cricket, of which he's a fan. But the gentleman today is 100 years old, and with his gift aid has raised in excess of £35 million for the NHS. That has to be worth standing to attention in my tie, blazer and beret this evening out the front. And I don't care if nobody sees me, because I know it's a mark of respect for a gentleman I will probably never have the honour of meeting. But it's an honour and a privilege to know that people are out there with such big hearts and souls. So I, for one, am very proud of it. So happy birthday, sir. So let's see who we've got. Fire in and fire off your shares, your hearts, your thumbs. Let's get some people watching. So not going to make it a long, convoluted professional presentation. You've seen me do some of those with PowerPoints, this, that, and the other. What I want to do is run through the practicalities and the application of some of these tests. I've just seen a thanks lovely from Nikki. Where is Dr. Gary based? For those that weren't listening, Nick, Penkridge, which is Cannock Chase, right on the edge of Cannock. But being an accommodating fellow, he will, if there are the required number of people, and I know you live a bit remote, which must be nice, come to you. So I know he's come on site for us at Fitness Factory, but we would have a day of testing, so we want at least half a dozen to 10 people. But we'll have a chat about that, Nikki, and if you can liaise with somebody close by, get some of the trainers involved, because it's a phenomenal, phenomenal asset to get that data. So let's see who else. Okay, so that's Dr. Gary. And you can pipe up at any point, Gary, if you want to put your details on, sir. I really don't mind. That's absolutely fine. So let's make sure I've got all my multimedia so I can read the questions. Pauline, how you doing, sweetheart? Hopefully you've had a good day, and it's really busy for you this morning, as we discussed. So bloods, as I said, the doctor's lab, TDL. So all your Harley Street doctors, or your London hospitals and doctors, in fact, if you go to Priory, BMI type hospitals, the one here in Edgbaston, they take the blood, so they do the venipuncture as I do, in a little vacutainer, yeah, basically a little test tube with a preservative in the bottom, so it preserves it, goes in a stamped, addressed, prepaid envelope down to the lab, unless, like one client that wanted to see me last week, and I said, pardon? You want me to do your bloods with a 2 meter restriction? It's not happening. But he did go to his local hospital, which happened to be Cannock, by the way, Gary. And then he was so adamant he wanted to get the bloods to the lab on time that he drove to London, safely put them in a Dropbox, came home. Each to his own, but we got the results. By the time he got through his front door back home, 2.5 hours later, I had his results for his health overview: red blood cells, white blood cells, liver enzymes, kidney function, lipid profile, glucose, iron status. On top of that, we did a full thyroid test. So we looked at TSH, T4, T3, antibodies. I'm going to clear some of these up in a minute. We did his male hormones, his LH, his FSH, his DHEA, his cortisol, his testosterone, his sex hormone binding globulin. Again, I will cover these, but all of that was tested within 2.5 hours. And that's what you get when you work with the right consultant with the right lab. So normally it would be venipuncture, and there's various colors of these, lavender, gray, etc. For different bloods, different tests require different additives, preservatives, and therefore different color top. But that would be a venipuncture in the arm. They do a restricted range of tests via what's called tinies. So tinies are a small version of those vacutainers, and it is quite limited as what they can do because the sample size is obviously smaller. But these can be a home test where you've got lancets, several alcohol swabs, so you can just do a pinprick as if you're testing blood sugar. So let's briefly touch on some of those that are rattled off a moment ago there. So as I said, a basic health overview would cover red blood cells, white blood cells, liver function tests, lipids, which would be all your different forms of cholesterol, triglycerides, which are fat particles in the blood, etc., etc. You would have your glucose, which is not the marker we want to be looking at if we're measuring for diabetes, by the way. Just to throw this in, anybody that's diabetic will know that they go to the GPs or the hospitals and they measure something different, a more specific test, which is looking at a retrospective view of the damage caused to the red blood cell by glucose and fructose, for those that are still told that fruit's not a problem. Okay, different conversation, but we're measuring something called HbA1c, glycosylated hemoglobin, which is the glycation factor damaging cells in the body, including mitochondrial function, which is actual energy turnover and production of protons and ATP. So we get AGEs, advanced glycotic end products, which causes mitochondrial dysfunction, leading to issues around chronic fatigue. So early stage mismanagement of your diet, leading to issues around things like syndrome X, which could develop into diabetes, but a blood sugar management problem could be picked up very early by measuring this. The glucose is that moment in time freeze frame, so different. You need to work with people who know what they're doing. And there are other things that are measured there, but then we could step on and maybe, look at thyroid function. So thyroid will generally be through the NHS. Amazing, amazing, amazing people. I am not here to criticize in any way, shape or form. They are restrained by budgets and rules and regs from the hierarchy. Okay, so all the respect in the world, but TSH is not giving us enough information. And even if you add T4, essentially the inactive hormone, the thyroid will generally, from a stimulus of TSH from the pituitary, triggers the thyroid to make approximately 80% T4 inactive hormone and 20% T3. And the T4 can convert down through to T3. You can actually branch off if you want to get specifically into reverse T3, so we get false readings. But then, this being the active hormone, therefore being all important on metabolism, mood, covered this in the mental health first aid course, low mood, actually clinical depression because by low thyroid status, hypothyroidism. But we can also get other types of hypothyroidism caused by antibodies attacking our own essential hormones. So very often through something called mimicry, but rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, celiac disease, it's a self-attack. Okay, so what we could have, we've got thyroglobulin, just going to abbreviate it, and we've got TPO antibodies, which is where we have our own immune system attack the T3, thereby reducing it. So it's not a matter of we're not making enough. It's not a matter of we're not converting the T4 through to T3. And then here we've got to look at tyrosine, etc., etc. So there's a number of ways. Gluten, which we know is an issue with celiacs, but it's also an issue in any autoimmune issue, including Hashimoto's disease. So the tests that I would recommend when somebody is symptomatic and maybe not got the answers through traditional testing of TSH and T4 are more extensive, available through many other practitioners. And if you go and see the endocrinologist at the hospital, you see the specialist, you may well get this tested. Saying that, I know a lot of people that don't, and therefore are told their thyroid is okay. They know they're symptomatic. They know they find it very difficult to lose body fat. They know their temperature regulation is poor and they're generally cold. They know potentially they're maybe even losing hair. They know their low mood potentially comes and goes, and that could be stress is going to amplify issues around the thyroid, because when we're looking at stress hormones from the suprarenals, the adrenals, and we've got your corticosteroids, we've got epinephrine, norepinephrine, etc. that I talked about last Friday with the talk from the garden on the anxiety, but I talked about something called cortisol. And the adrenals directly communicate and relate to the thyroid. So very often stress is going to lead to an issue with the thyroid. And by the way, ladies, you're a lot more prone to issues with thyroid dysregulation than men are. So I've diagnosed Hashimoto's in a fair few females. I don't think thyroid issues I've seen in men, but I don't think I personally, and they can get the issue, I've seen the autoimmune issue, which is where the thyroglobulin or TPO antibodies attack the T4/T3. Not seen that in men. So it might be the missing piece of the jigsaw in your health. So that's a few of the tests. I'm not going to run through every single one. And that's absolute rubbish, isn't it? I'll get some spray possibly in a second. God knows we've all got enough disinfectant and cleaning sprays around, but that'll do to take the edge off. We might want to look at male and female hormone panels. So we've got the signals from the pituitary governed by the hypothalamus, but we've got LH and we've got FSH. This is not going to work very well unless I clean it. LH and FSH. So just follow me verbally. See if I can get it down there. LH and FSH. Signaler hormones, messenger hormones. Then they're going to stimulate the respective gonads. So we've got the Leydig cells of the testicles, or we've got the ovaries. And we're going to get estrogens. Notice the emphasis on the plural. E1, E2, E3. Estriol, estradiol, estrone, progesterone, prolactin, sex hormone binding globulin, etc., etc., etc. Still relevant in males. When I do hormone testing with men, I'm measuring estrogens. When I do hormone testing with females, I'm testing testosterone and DHEA. Women's testosterone levels might be 1, 1.5. For a guy, 8 to 30. Flip that. For a woman, estrogen levels are generally higher, but we've got the 28-day cycle, so you're going to get spikes up of estrogen mid-cycle ovulation towards the end there. The progesterone's going to increase if there's been no fertility, i.e. the little sperm interacting with the egg. So we get changes in the 28-day cycle as to the hormone. So when you get a hormone test done, ladies, around the time of the month, they need to know where you are sitting in that 28-day cycle. And if they're not asking that, the levels, follicular, ovulatory, luteal, menopausal, postmenopausal, are all different. So your reference range is going to differ according to where you are in your age and your cycle regularity. And if they do not ask that, there's no way of knowing if your numbers are right, wrong, indifferent, or bloody upside down. You need to work with professionals who know what they are doing. So lots of these things can be offered, obviously, in a blood test. Some of these things, albeit on a reduced scale because the amount of blood volume we need, can be taken with those little tinies. So I'll introduce those again. Excuse me, for those that didn't see them, if you're coming a bit later. So that's a regular vial, and we might need a number of these. These are the tinies. So that's a home single-use lancet pinprick. That would require me or a phlebotomist to take the bloods. That you can do yourself, but you won't be able to run big profiles on tiny samples of blood. So I'm getting people pop messages up. Let's catch up and see if there are any questions, because I like to be interactive. Ben Kelly, how you doing? Peter, as always, how you doing? Big Lorry Cars watching. Craig Johns, how you doing? Superstar Sally, cool. Mark Gauntlet, how you doing, pal? We only ever seem to see each other passing, respectively, up and down. Emma, how you doing? On the escalators at Sainsbury's. So maybe about time we had a chat after all this and say hello proper. So let's look at some of the other tests. As I said, I'm not here to go into great detail because some of them really are very extensive in what they cover. But just to show you what's available working with practitioners. So absolutely phenomenal test. So Nordic have recently took this over from Invivo. I was using Invivo for years. I was one of the first persons to get the test done. They expanded the test, and we are looking at 5 to 6 pages of in-depth reports looking at microflora bacteria, the good guys, the bad guys, the commensals, the pathogens, parasites, the worms, the protozoa, the yeast infections like Candida, norovirus, adenovirus. Absolutely phenomenal. You know, which bacteria are hosted in the small intestines, which are hosted in the large intestines. Many of these are transient, meaning they're constantly passing through us. If you've got any gastrointestinal issues and distress, umbrella term labeled as IBS, that could be anything. It could be H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori in the stomach. It tests various types of Helicobacter pylori plus virulence factors, how strong it is, etc. It could be issues around the pancreas. We're checking pancreatic enzymes. It could be fat or blood in the stool. It's tested. It could be that your secretory IgA, the protective antibodies that line the mucosal lining, so important in the current situation, through the nasal cavities, through the mouth, all the way down, front and back exit pathways. Secretory IgA starts getting laid down in the first bit of breast milk that comes out actually before the milk, called colostrum in mammals. Can take it in supplemental form, but it is a prime source of your immediate to the environment immune system, and it can be very low. In fact, this week I've had some results for a gentleman who had to report very low secretory IgA. It measures using PCR, which is genetic measuring within the stool, genetic material, which antibiotics will actually work for you and which ones won't. We can get antibiotic resistant genes, and they are measured in a stool test. Phenomenal. As a bonus, we can't go on holiday. Your poop's going off to Atlanta, Georgia. Cool. Now, all these tests need to be paid for. All these tests are non-NHS. They are independent, high-level labs, and they take a lot of interpretation. A lot of training goes into understanding these results, the complexities of and the responsibilities I have to report the findings professionally. And that might mean referring them back to their GP, who hopefully is going to take them on board. And I do have GPs who are friends and clients of mine who have referred patients out of the NHS system because they know that they can't do the range of tests. One marker they will use for inflammation is calprotectin. So they can tell me they have an elevated calprotectin level. We know there's inflammation. Why? Because of parasites, because of worms, because of Candida, because of H. pylori, because of pancreatic issues, because of. Answers. What we've got here is answers. There's another test, literally just come out, and this was the company that was in charge of doing the GI map. I've always been a massive fan of the GI map, and Nordic just took it on. But 3 years ago, I had them Amara Cadogan specifically come over from Copenhagen to do some training masterclasses. To give you an idea, we had functional medicine doctors and surgeons. We had people from Portugal, from Denmark, from Iceland, from Norway, from everywhere. Unbelievable. And that's because of him more than me. He drew them in. But I staged it. I had GPs, as I said, were friends and clients of mine, and I insisted that they do the GI map. And at the time, they were doing other tests. But having seen, and they've held back for a couple of years to see the accuracy of the results, having seen the results and the applied knowledge from said results to make a difference to people's lives, they've now took on the GI map. So this company have now brought on this GI Ecologics, based at a CQC approved, NHS approved lab down south, and I've just done my first lot of results with this and reported them back. There's a big crossover with the GI map, but slightly different. There are markers in here which are not measured in the GI map, and vice versa. So depending on the issues you have, the symptoms, the history of, any previous diagnostic tests and assessments you might have had, I might steer you towards one or the other. But one of these, if you've got gut issues, is really the direction you want to go, because I know people have had a horrendous period, and I'm talking maybe 20, 30 years with gut issues. You know, without getting into detail, because obviously it's a bit personal for people, but bad times. Now, both of these do require a stool test. So you get a home test kit, you get your gloves, you get a little tray, you do your business, you scoop it into the container there that's got some liquid, give it a shake and get it picked up by a courier. That's a home test for gut health, GI map and GI Ecologics. So to look at the Nordic as well, notice it says exempt human specimen, so you are sending bodily fluids. This is urine. The Dutch test actually stands for your dry urine, cortisol total hormone. So this is where you're measuring cortisol, the metabolite cortisone, you're measuring DHEA, you're measuring testosterone, you're measuring the different estrogens and metabolites of those, which potentially leading to issues with DNA damage and potential increase in cancer risk. You're looking at neurotransmitters in the brain, such as your melatonin, dopamine, etc., etc. So for a full spectrum hormone test, and it's multiple samples throughout the day, so it's not a one-stop shop quick assessment such as a blood take. This is actually going to measure changes, for instance, in cortisol spikes in the morning, gets you out of bed because it maps adrenaline and comes down and should settle through the evening to allow you to nicely relax and go to sleep. If that's not the case, this will give the answers as to what's happening. Then under consultation, why is that happening and what can we do about it? So that's a Dutch test, really, really, really useful. Loads of markers, again, covered. But these are private tests. An absolute range of fantastic tests on DNA. Lots of companies doing DNA testing. They didn't work with a company. I had some training by a company when this first got popular years ago. I was really unimpressed. It was all about marketing. It was all about profit margin. They covered nothing about the detail of interpretations of the SNPs. SNPs are single nucleotide polymorphisms, the variations in how our genes work from person to person, and you're born with them, but how you influence them, your environment, epigenetics, etc. That's what's important. So raising awareness of potential issues does not mean you will get that issue. In fact, it could mean the opposite, that you offset that issue with a change in your lifestyle, behavior, thinking, actions, nutrition, supplementation. So you might have issues around inflammation. Well, you think about your antioxidants and your natural anti-inflammatories like turmeric. You might have issues around certain mood states, etc., because there's lots of different profiles. They do a health profile, DNA Health, covers a whole range of health issues, and you are then proactive in your behavioral change. They do one for fitness. Are you more of an endurance type or are you more of a power type? But also it looks at inflammation and recovery. They do one for nutrition. How do you utilize, store, or effectively turn over into energy, ATP, protons, carbohydrates and fat? Do you get inflammation from your GLA omega-6 fats, for instance, with your FADS1 and FADS2 SNPs? In plain English, people talk about things like evening primrose oil, etc., starflower borage oil or Formodo's oil, your omega-6s, and normally very beneficial and healthy. For some people, they convert very readily through to what's called arachidonic acid, which is going to convert your DGLA through to prostaglandin series 2. Those of you that have studied with me in nutrition, this might be a bit of a recap and a reminder. for the others. I explain all of this in layman's terms, in plain, simple English when I get the results, because it's up to you to understand what it is I'm talking about and to put those results into a real world situation. So it's not to bamboozle you, it's so you understand, you are empowered. They do DNA skin, yeah, and looking at skin issues and eczema, psoriasis, collagen levels, etc., etc. But one that I find absolutely fascinating, one of their newest tests, and it's been out a year and a half, DNA Mind. I talk about this when I teach issues around mental health, because our genes influence sometimes how well we think, or maybe we don't think very well, we don't behave very well. Maybe we've got extreme behavioral types, maybe we've got predispositions and are prone to depression or anxiety or bipolar or addictive behavior. It also measures neurodegenerative issues and diseases. So it's actually covering 3 different, and these are just, by the way, a mouth swab. It's like a big cotton bud inside of your mouth, send it off to the lab, picking up DNA in the soft tissue in the mouth. So we've got in the DNA Mind, neurodegenerative issues are measured, addictive behavioral issues and personality types are measured, and mood, prone to anxiety, even PTSD markers. Yeah, so the COMT enzyme, which can be measured in genetic material, I explained last week, can increase how long that you stay fired up, anxious, angry, whatever for, because if you have a slow or sluggish COMT, it means we don't break down the epinephrine, the adrenaline. All can be measured. Phenomenal. So please play this back. I know I'm kind of whizzing through, but I don't want to keep you all evening. I do want you folks to be ready on your doorsteps, front lawns, in the street, wherever it might be, to cheer on Colonel Tom and the NHS and every other key worker out there. And thank you to any of you that are watching. There are markers we can measure in saliva at different lab. I have, like with the supplement companies and nutrition companies and stuff, I have no loyalty, no financial gain or anything from any of these companies, which is why I'm talking about, the Doctors Lab, V in Vivo, V Nordic, V Genova. These are all top end labs and facilitators of tests, because some of them white label and they farm them out to labs. So Genova do loads of testing. The one that I used traditionally in the past was their saliva test for cortisol and DHEA, and the correlation and crossover of those for measuring stress anxiety patterns throughout pretty much a 24-hour cycle. But I've found that the Dutch test, which is a dry urine test, covers it very well and keeps the cost down. Because if you're looking at side by side the cost, you get a lot more in the Dutch test. And yes, it's double the price, but you get a lot more information. Simple pinprick as well. You can get the bronze, silver, gold. I always recommend the gold, because if you're going to do any kind of test, go to the top end, get all the markers and parameters. So this is a food intolerance test. To be clear, this is not an allergy test. This is immunoglobulin G, IgG, whereas an allergy is IgE. If you get tested for an allergy, you do not know anything about the intolerances. If you get measured for the intolerances, you do not know anything about the allergies. So you'll get people that discredit this. They are changeable, you see, because with an allergy, it's generally lifelong. It's an immediate onset. A small amount of the antigen can trigger it. And one of the key ways you'll know is if you take an antihistamine, because there's a histamine mast cell response with allergies. If you take an antihistamine, it will help in an allergy response. It will not help in an intolerance response. Now, just to make it clear, an allergy response isn't necessarily anaphylactic shock, airways closing down, etc. You don't always have to hit yourself with an EpiPen because you've got an allergic reaction. That's an extreme anaphylactic response to an antigen. These can be a lot more subtle, but still, day to day, can really affect people negatively. And this measures over 200 different foods, condiments, and drinks. So, for instance, about 9 different wines. So maybe you can have a Malbec, but you can't have a Chardonnay or a Shiraz or whatever it might be. The difference between cow's milk and goat's milk and oat milk and rice milk. Difference between egg white and egg yolk, lemons and limes. But it measures all weird and wonderful little condiments and herbs and your parsley and your pepper. And so, very, very useful to fast track some answers rather than people doing strict long-term elimination diets. So these are just some of the tests that can be offered by me and other qualified practitioners. In fact, some of my past students, especially those that have done the advanced study and masterclasses with friends of mine like Amaro Cadogan, because when it comes to like the DNA testing and the clinical understanding of those and the teaching of, he's the guy that I bring over. He's the guy that I studied with twice. So unlike the first initial company that I looked at that offered the genetic testing, they did 1 day's training and hardly any of it was on content of actually interpreting the results and what the SNPs mean and how we look at them in the big picture and cross-relate them. If you want to call it functional medicine model or BioCare around the corner from me, do amazing structure where they step back and they call it adaptive health. And you look at maybe the bloods, you maybe look at lifestyle, you maybe look at the SNPs, you maybe look at urines and stuff. So you step right back, and that's what I do. Look at the big picture, and without testing, sometimes we are totally working blind, and I refuse to do that. So when you invest in me, it might mean investing only if it's relevant, and it's only for a few clients, one in, I don't know, 50 or 100. Some of you tuning in and know I've had these tests, so if you want to pipe up, by all means, if you don't want to, that's cool, but you know, maybe you want to say something about it. Maybe you want to ask a question. I've rattled through very quickly. Have a review of this little video. And if you're interested, DM me. But let's have a look, see if there's any questions, folks. And I will get to answering them. So I would like to do this test. Which test is that then, Gemma? Because you've done a few. Fascinating. Okay, guess a clue as to which bits is fascinating. Me, the T-shirt, the fact that I couldn't wipe the ink off the whiteboard. So let me scroll up a bit and see who we've got. So Luke Brown, how you doing? Fantastic gentleman, chiropractor. I liaise with, cross-reference network with, swap information and education, and sometimes clients with people like Luke. So your osteopath, your chiropractor, your sports therapist, etc., 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 because they do what I can't do, and they do some of the things that I can do, but they do it better. So please work with professionals who will not be a jack of all trades, but are looking after your optimal health, not well-being. What kind of bloods with the leptin test? You're obsessed with leptin. Okay, let's get booked in, but leptin, what you're looking at is predisposition to maybe obesity markers. You've got a ghrelin, this, that, and the other. So I will have a look. It was something I was going to look into it for you. Do you know if we do testing on it on? Do you know if we do testing on gastric hormones, shall we call? And I'm pretty sure that the doctor's lab, I'll have a quick look in a minute and see what the doctor's lab run for you. Nordic are one of my suppliers at work, impressive kit. Nordic are fantastic. I know the team at Nordic very well. They're backup when I need any backup on the phone, and I'm not too proud to ask. I'll call the clinicians there. They're experts, very experienced in their tests. I spent 45 minutes on the phone to somebody at Invivo, another great outfit, and I went through the whole range of results for a client of mine who has really got some serious issues, potentially even more serious, but he's really on the cusp of the difference between IBS, non-specific syndrome, and irritable bowel disease when we start stepping into more serious Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, etc., celiacs. And if he doesn't do something about it, even more serious than that. And he's done a recent shift in lifestyle, because the last time I saw him, he was eating really poorly and he was well over 20 stone. And I called him expecting to say it's because of the way you're living and eating, pal. But he's actually sorted it out a bit. So we need to take it that next step further. He's already lost 4 stone, which is great. He's an ex-student of mine. Then DNA test. Okay. So Gemma, with the DNA test, as you said, we've got one for health. We've got one for nutrition. We've got one for fitness. We've got one for mind. See if they find anything. We've got one for skin. We've got estrogen, which I actually would prefer to call it detox, because I've done all of them myself. Actually, I haven't done the skin, so I don't want to lie. But the estrogen is more to do with detox pathways, conjugation, methylation, sulfation, etc., getting rid of potentially damaged 4-HE1, etc. So in plain English, that one is really worth doing for the guys as well. Don't think of it as just estrogen, because it is looking at endotoxins getting through the digestive system into the blood, especially, looking at beta-glucuronidase markers, and if they're elevated, we've got a problem, and we're getting toxins systemically in the blood. So it's a big test. So let me know. Obsessed. I know you're obsessed. Just do the walking. Keep walking, even in the rain. Okay? Just break it down. Simple steps and repeat. Left, right, left, right, left, right, and repeat for the next 45 minutes to an hour. So the DNA, as I said, Nordic are the only lab I would use for them, to be honest. Nordic are the only lab I would use for the DNA. I'm sure there are other good ones, but I've been using those for years. I've done my own tests with them, my little boys with them, lots of friends, family, and clients with them, the doctors that I train with them, and the guys. I'll say guys because you also got Graham, who's an English gentleman, great clinician, living in Stockholm, Sweden. So he's swanning about. He can go to the restaurants, he can go to the bars, but I'm not bitter. But Graham Jones is a great guy, and I brought over Amaro Cadogan, phenomenal mind. Me and him have been lecturing and crossing paths since 2004 when we both did respective research on the Udo's oil. Udo Erasmus, phenomenal gentleman, fats at heal, fats at kill. I've got it here somewhere. So these aren't guys that I've just read the books. These are guys that I've studied with. These are guys that I know. These are guys that I've stood next to and presented with. So a lot of the wisdom that I'm sharing has come from a higher authority, if you want to call it that. And Amaro Cadogan is a great mind. And I've done the course with him 3 times actually, because I went and studied with him myself. It was a 4-day residential, and back then there was only 4 profiles. There's now 6 or 7 because it was before they brought out certainly the skin and the mind. And it was a day on each profile, but really in-depth, intricate question on what we knew and what we understood of the pathways. Everybody there was a qualified practitioner. I'm not knocking PTs, but the first course I went on, it was just a marketing, sales, kind of meeting for PTs. And the second course I went, these were experienced, long-term professionals, studied functional medicine, totally different level. When you're putting your health at this level, your DNA, your bloods, your hormone levels, etc., please work with professionals. Don't buy a kit just off Google, because it's not the results that's going to make a difference to your life. It's understanding what the results mean in the context of your current situation, what your goals are, what the influences are on your food, on your drink, on your supplements, on your medication, etc. And if people aren't asking these questions, for me, it generally takes filling in a load of paperwork, questionnaires, food diaries, previous medical history, medications. Then we're going to have a little chat on the phone. Then I'm going to book you in. Then you're going to do the test. And then we might spend a couple of hours sitting down and going through all these results. So how can you get the equivalent of that from a generic online order, set of results in the post, and you're supposed to sit and interpret it? Now, I know at the moment finances are tight for a lot of people. They are for me. So I'm not saying do these tests. I'm just letting you know, because people were asking what is available and what can be done at the moment. But because I think a lot of people's health awareness has really picked up, especially immunology and the immune system. And a lot of that initiates from gut health, as does mood, gut-brain axis. We're talking about serotonin in the brain. 90% is made in the gut. We've got dopamine levels influenced by the gut. We heard Nikki asking about leptin and ghrelin and CCK and all of this. It's gut generated. So eating better, taking your supplements, drinking water, getting movement is going to definitely enhance your health and especially support your immune system to be as efficient and as strong as it can be. But before you start changing everything, before you start taking a load of supplements, and please always take advice on that as well, especially if you're on medication, but always buy quality. You don't need to be taking 30 different tablets and capsules. Maybe 2 or 3 of better quality ones specific to your needs would be a wiser investment. But these tests are going to lead a practitioner like me into the advice that I give you to give you the very best pathway to your optimal health. Okay, so I'll have a quick review, see if there's any more questions, and then I will let you people get on with your day. Colliers, I'd like to do a few of them. You just mentioned it used to be, Jen, by the way, that you'd have to do a med swab per profile. They seem to have got that down now. In fact, did one recently, a couple of months ago, and I thought I'd need a couple of testing kits, and they said no. There was 4 to 5 profiles, and we ran it off one swab. So it's just down to sample size. It's got more sensitive, I guess. So I'll probably send you 2 kits, just so you've got a backup. And then the turnaround time on the results, a bit more delayed at the moment. Still goes by courier, but you're probably looking about 2 weeks. But then, as you know, there's an awful lot of data that comes from those. So the conversation to go through them, telephone, WhatsApp, Zoom, Skype, whatever it might be, but it would be a couple of hours. So the expertise comes in the interpretation for the individual and the feedback so you understand what they mean. Linda, how you doing, hon? Up in Scotland, so that's cool. We don't seem to have many questions coming in. I know I've kind of thrown a lot of info and some long words at you in a machine gun kind of style. So I'll let you get on with your evening. Review it back. If you've got any questions, drop me a direct message. It's just to show you that there are professionals out there who can investigate markers of health and really fast track you towards feeling better, thinking better, moving better, living longer. It's possible, even in these crazy times. Maybe even because of these crazy times, the awareness of one's health has been forced upon us. And maybe now isn't the time to do the testing because of finances, but it's out there. And there are hundreds of more tests. I'm just giving you an introduction to some of the, if you like, more standard ones that I offer. And I know there's a good few of you tuning in who have done a lot of these tests. Not for me to say, client confidentiality is important, but I think you'll agree, those of you that have had the test done, it's quite surprising what can be learned. Then it's down to you to apply. I can't do that bit for you. You have got to diligently execute the plan that we, under consultation and agreement, put together. That's down to you. And I can motivate you all along the way. I can check in, I can encourage you, I can give you accountability. We can do that over webcams like this. But ultimately, it's your responsibility to act upon the information. But if you want the information, give me a shout, DM me, look at my website, gbfitness.com, drop me an email, cain@gbfitness.com, CAIN, and let's see if we can work together. Okay, have a great evening. Don't forget, Colonel Tom, if he can raise over £35 million and walk his 100 laps, you can walk the 10, 15, 20 steps to your front door. Gemma, I know you'll probably have to get a helicopter to yours. She lives in a big house in London. So get to your front doors, show support, and even if you don't, understand what that gentleman has done to bring people together, make us think about what is possible, and he shows what a good heart is. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. Key workers especially. Please stay safe. Please stay in. And keep in touch. Say hello. Drop me a message, a text, a WhatsApp, a messenger. If you need help, if I can't give it to you, I'll find the person that can. Take care all.